Hi guys, thanks for logging on and joining the video today and checking this out. Today we're going to be talking about 1099 and how that works as far as your taxes go, how I've structured myself up for a 1099, and how to kind of just overall prepare yourself for a 1099 position, and kind of what that means and what that's all about as compared to a W-2. Um, so the way that we're gonna talk about a 1099 today, there's a a few different ways that can go down as far as you being a 1099. The way that we're going to talk about it today is like sales, independent contractor in a sales type position. This is the closest type that will relate to the insurance industry and being an insurance agent and a 1099 insurance agent. So it's going to be sales geared, but it'll apply a lot to any 1099 position. So if you're looking at going into a 1099 position, give this video a listen, and I hope it can answer any questions for you, kind of help you out a little bit. We're going to stay a little on the general side of things, and I might have to end up making this a two-part video because it might go a little long. The whole structure of a 1099 is very deep. So we probably won't get to everything, and I'm sure there's people out there that know a whole lot more about it than even I do, that can help you out. But hopefully, I can get you started in the right direction. Um, a few disclaimers before we get started here. I am not a tax professional. So anytime you are looking at doing your taxes and getting stuff set up for your finance in the future, you want to look at a financial planner or a tax expert. You could check out your local, whoever does your taxes usually. And before we kind of get into talking about this, I do want to say this. A lot of people, I've had a lot of friends that own businesses and such, and they still would try to do their own taxes, which is fine. I mean, if you know the tax law, if you can't, I guess you really can't know the whole tax law. The tax law is insanely huge, but if you know your way around taxes, you're used to doing it. That's one thing. If you're a CPA, that's another thing too. So I mean, if you're doing your own taxes and you have had training in that, that's fine. But for everybody else like myself who hasn't been trained in taxes, when you just have like a regular W-2 job and you're doing your taxes yourself on the online program or whatever, that's fine. But when you go into a 1099, more often than not, what I've seen is people are leaving money in essence on the table because they're trying to save money and do their taxes themselves, which ends up hurting them in the long run. So if you're looking at going into a 1099 position, you really need a good tax person, somebody that can help you out, help you structure, help you plan. And so what I would do if I was starting over and if I was in your position and getting ready to go into a 1099, I would look for a good tax consultant, and kind of let them know this. Hey, this is what I'm looking at doing. This is roughly about how much money I'm going to make a year. This is roughly about how much expenses I have, and they'll start letting you know based off of what you're doing, what you can write off. And write-offs are huge on 1099. So the two differences between W-2 and 1099 is W-2 usually comes from your employer and they take out the taxes already. So you don't have to worry about paying taxes at the end of the year unless they're not, for whatever reason, when you set up your form at the beginning of your employment, usually you have to, fill out a form about how many dependents you have, stuff like that. And that'll let them know how much money to withhold from your check every month or every paycheck. Now, 1099, they don't do that. You're an independent contractor. You're a sole proprietor, maybe, or maybe you're an LLC, or maybe you're just an insurance agent or a real estate agent, something like that, or you're looking at getting into that profession. And those are typically 1099 positions. And you're an independent contractor, even if you're contracted, technically with like a real estate company or an insurance company, you're still an independent contractor. So they don't take any taxes out for you. Now that's a big one to watch out for, because I've had some friends of mine who have didn't realize that they weren't, I guess when they first got started in the industry, they didn't realize that they weren't taking these taxes out, and it just kind of accumulated, and they ended up owing the government a lot of money. So the first suggestion that I'm going to have for you, for a 1099, is to save at least 10% for taxes. And I'm going to say at least 10% for taxes, depending on how much you're planning on making. And a tax advisor can help you out better in this situation of knowing how much to save for, how much to set aside for that. And usually, what I like to do, because we only do our taxes usually once a year. So what I like to do is I like to take my money, put it into like a high yield dividend account, usually something like a CD, or even like a pretty safe stock that'll pay a little bit of a dividend. That way, I'm kind of growing that money more than if I just put it into a bank while I'm waiting for my taxes to come. Now be careful. Again, I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not a stockbroker, anything like that. So I know the stocks are going to go up and down. So it just kind of depends on what you feel comfortable with, where you're going to save that money. But that way, when at the end of the year, when you're doing your taxes and you have to pay, your tax advisor, your accountant will factor in your what you're able to write off versus how much money you made and how much taxes you have to owe from that. So it really pays off to have a good tax accountant or tax advisor, accountant, CPA, somebody that does your taxes for you, that knows what they're doing, knows what write-offs you can take, and isn't going to get you in trouble for taking bogus write-offs, stuff like that. I caution against it because I've seen it being done. So be careful. Make sure you get somebody that knows what they're doing and that can help you out in that process. Now, the second thing that I usually tell people along this is budget and stick to it. And stick to it is the important part, because we can all plan out a budget, but if we're not sticking to it, it's a waste. If we're not sticking to that budget, then we just wasted our time making the budget. But it's so important, especially in the sales world, especially like real estate sales, insurance sales. Sales in general are going to have highs and lows. I remember when I was first getting into the sales industry, somebody had told me, and I'm sure that you've heard this term. I don't think it's an original term, but sales are feast or famine. You're either doing really good or you're having really bad money. So this is what I tell people: budget and stick to it, and save that extra money. If you're doing really good that month, and you're way over budget on your income, then that is fantastic. Stock that aside, stick with your budget, because next month it may not be like that. You may be having a rough month and you may have to go back into the savings to pay your bills and to come out with stuff like that. So I always tell people budget. Don't get yourself into a bind. Don't, just because you've had a really good month, don't go crazy. I mean, it is good to reward yourself every once in a while, but let's stick to a budget. Budget that in. If I make this much, this is how much my reward is going to be. And stick to your budget. The budget is so important. And then once you have other revenue streams coming in, then you can better plan out your budget. Because if you for instance, if you have just I always like to use the analogy of a fisherman. If a fisherman has one boat and that one boat doesn't do good, then that fisherman doesn't do good. But if that same fisherman, if he has 5 boats, right? He has these 5 boats. Now, these 2 boats may not be doing very well, but the other 3 are. So he's able to balance that out. So once you have different revenue streams coming in, it's a little bit easier to budget. You can allow yourself a little bit more leeway in the budget. But when you're very first getting started, especially on 1099, I suggest people budget, and stick to it. Because if you're not going to stick to it, then you're going to get yourself into some hurt. And I hate to see that happen for people. I've seen people they've thrown away really good careers because they weren't able to budget. And I would hate to see you go through something like that. And the last one that I'm going to just talk about today, at least on this video, is give generously, but keep your receipts. And I always say this, I was raised Christian, I'm a pastor, and I always like to give back to the community. We give to the church, we give to a couple of other organizations, but give generously. But also know that those gifts that you give, especially to organizations that are set up in a certain way. I forget the tax code is of it, but you can actually get write-offs from what you donate. Just like if you were to go down to like the Goodwill, you give them a bag of clothes, they can give you a receipt for it. You can write it off on your taxes. Write-offs are very important for 1099. So I always tell people, give generously, help out your community. Once you're making some, once you're making some decent money, factor in, we have in our budget, my wife and I, in our budget, we have a specific amount set aside for giving. And that's because I believe that, people call it karma. You reap what you sow. However you want to, what goes around comes around, however you want to phrase that. I believe that positive energy will return in a positive way. And I've seen it, it just helps when you're in a, you're in a funk, you're going through a bad time, and it's time to give that check. And man, my budgets, my income hasn't met the budget this month, but man, I said I was going to do this, so I'm going to do it. And at that initial time, it's hard to give that money away, but once you do, it's like a burden releases from you because you're helping somebody else. And that helping somebody else, I believe with everything that I am, is when you start helping other people, it's going to come back to you. It's going to come back to you. And it's, I've heard that sales is just a transfer of energy. If you have negative energy, it's going to come back to you in a negative way. If you have positive energy, it's going to come back to you in a positive way. I think it's the same way about giving. If you're giving generously and you're giving freely and you're giving positively, that positive energy is going to come back to you and it's going to help you in the long run. But keep your receipts because it can help you on your taxes. And there's different things that you can write off if you're working from home. At least in California where I live, you can write off part of your mortgage or part of your rent. You can write off if you use your phone for work, you can write off your cell phone. If you use your car for work, you can write off your car, your gas. There's a couple of different ways to do vehicle write-offs, but get with a good tax advisor, a good CPA, and they can help you through that process and they can get you set up. The most important for me is the budget. If you don't have a good budget on a 1099 and you have a bad month, it's going to really hurt you. So that's the number one important part, in my opinion, is to have that budget and to stick to it. I hope this video kind of helps you out a little bit. We'll get more into depth on a 1099 on the next video, what that is and kind of how to structure it a little bit and a couple of different ways to do that. But I hope this video kind of helps you at least dive your foot into it and make the decision. I love for people to start in businesses. I love for people to become business owners. I love seeing the mom and pop shops open up and have these stores. That's where the real customer service comes from. That real quality service comes from those mom and pop shops, and it keeps America going. And I love seeing those pop up. My wife and I had a pool business. We did where we live in California. It gets over 100 degrees a lot of the year, and especially in the summertime. June, July, August for us is just brutal. And so what that means is a lot of houses have swimming pools. So we had a swimming pool company that we cleaned and maintained swimming pools. And if you can see it on the shirt here, I still have the shirt, but I don't have the company. We just sold it not too long ago to one of our employees. And I love that. I love being able to sell a company to one of our employees and to keep it going and to make them a business owner. I love the whole 1099. I love people owning companies, especially those mom and pop shops that are just good. I remember that phrase going around a little while. I haven't heard it in a while, but buy local, stay local, or something like that, or stay local, buy local, something like that. But helping each other out, helping your community out. And that's what it's all about. That's what a 1099 is. A 1099 employee is, you're a small business. You are a business unto yourself. And so you have to really structure your budget like you're a business. But I kind of hope this helps you out, guys. And like I said, if there's any specific questions that you want me to address on the next video, please go ahead and leave them in the comment section. I'd be happy to answer those for you. But we'll get into a little bit more depth. I'm trying to keep the videos around 10 minutes or so. But the 1099 aspect is just such a big one that I think we're going to have to break it down into a couple of different videos. So the next video will kind of go into a more in-depth study, if you will, of what a 1099 is and kind of how to structure that a little bit. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you can, please hit that like and subscribe button. It would help me out and I would appreciate it. Thank you guys so much and have a great, fantastic day.